Kia ora koutou. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Wastewater Treatment Plant and Landfill Joint Committee of September the 5th, 2023. We will begin with our karakia. I'll welcome everybody to participate in it. So, toru wha, whakataka tahau ki te uru, whakataka tahau ki te tonga, kia mā kina ki uta, kia mā tātara ki tai. E hi ake ana, te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, tihei, mauri ora. Kia ora koutou. I'm going to have there's a couple of apologies. Andrew Dalziel is unavailable today, and at short notice, Roy Baker, who is to be his replacement, is also unavailable due to illness, as well as the Mayor. So I'll note Mayor Baker as well. We don't have any other apologies? Okay. Then we will move on to public forum. Sorry, that's it, right? Yeah. We move on to public forum. We have 3 requests to speak. Each speaker has 5 minutes to speak, except noting that there is a adjustment for the final 2. Each speaker has 5 minutes to speak, including questions. A bell will be rung at the 4-minute mark for the 5-minute speakers, and at the 8-minute mark for the 10-minute presentation. It will ring again at the 5-minute mark and the 10-minute mark, respectively. Members can ask questions of clarification only, but cannot enter into debate with speakers. Speakers should take note of the restrictions in the standing orders, including that matters which are subject to separate hearing processes must not be discussed, and that a speaker cannot speak on an issue that they have previously spoken about. With that, I call for Brian Warburton to come and speak for 5 minutes. Thank you for coming in.
There we go. I am Brian Warburton, a resident and ratepayer of Porirua City. I have previously presented to this committee on a similar subject to which I now speak. In brief, the subject matter is the discrepancy between the committee's role as specified in its terms of reference and both councils, Porirua City Council and Wellington City Council's commitments agreed and specified under the joint venture deed between these 2 councils. I have provided the councils and committee members with a full presentation about the subject. I ask that that document be tabled and recorded in the minutes. The main points are: the public record of the committee's meeting on the 6th of December last year suggests that the current chair of this committee and senior council management consider the scope of the committee's function as limited to the wastewater treatment plant. This approach is consistent with the committee's terms of reference, which state that the committee's function is limited to, and I quote, provide governance for the joint services through the joint venture agreements of the wastewater treatment plant. No mention is made in the terms of reference of network infrastructure such as pipes and pump stations. The PCC-WCC joint venture agreement actually specifies that the purpose of this committee should be to undertake a governance function by overseeing the general control and management of joint wastewater works. Joint wastewater works are not confined simply to the wastewater treatment plant. They include the mains network between the PCC Wellington City Council boundary at Kenepuru and the Tanari Drive pump stations, the mains network between the Tanari Drive and Rukatani Point via Main Road, Whitehouse Road, Tiriti Road and Beach Road, etc. The mains network via a direct link between Tanari Drive and the wastewater treatment plant, and the wastewater network pump stations at Rukatani Point and Tanari Drive. So the committee's terms of reference do not encompass what is actually required under the provisions of the joint venture agreement. With this discrepancy, questions could be asked about the legitimacy of this committee's recommendations, along with the subsequent decisions by full council. I consider the committee's terms of reference require review and amendment as provided under the Local Government Act. The primary objective of that review should be to ensure that the committee's terms of reference are consistent with the obligations on both councils under the terms of the joint venture agreement. Thank you for the time and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Warburton. There's still time in the 5 minutes, so I'll open up if councillors have any questions of clarification for the Speaker. Porirua Kelly.
Thank you, Brian, for your submission. I just wanted clarity that what you're submitting is that what we were told in the meeting, the previous meeting where we had to restrict our comments to, you're saying that the understanding that you have is that it's a lot bigger than that.
It essentially comes down to whether or not this committee thinks it's acting under its terms of reference, or if it's acting under the joint venture agreement. Under the joint venture agreement, then this committee should be considering not only the wastewater treatment plant, but also the network which feeds into that plant. But under the terms of reference, taken literally, those terms of reference of this committee only apply to the wastewater treatment plant.
Okay, bye. Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, Councillor Leggett.
Just for clarification, Brian, are you a member of the public? Sorry. That's you, is it?
That's me.
Right. Just for clarity.
Any other questions? If there are no other questions, sorry, Councillor Philo.
Look, just following on from Councillor Leggett there, I just want to say what you've prepared here, it is quite extensive, and I wanted to know, and just to say thank you as well for putting in this work, but what I'd like to know is, when did you submit it? I know we got a copy of it this morning from you, but when was it submitted to council? Or was it submitted to council?
Yes, it was provided to Democratic Services at least 3rd of August, actually. 3rd of August.
Can we have, when documents like this come in, either emailed or put up on diligence, just so that we have more time to prepare, especially when it's a report with a lot of information and a lot of things to digest? That would be really helpful.
Speaking to that request, it's entirely reasonable for it to be for those documentation to come in accordance with the deadline for public forum. Obviously, some have taken advantage of putting those items in earlier than the deadline, but in order to make sure that all items are given to councillors in advance, that if items are being presented as part of a request to speak, that they come in around the deadline and that all documents go out to the councillors at that point. At least then all the documents will be with councillors at that same time.
So like even last Wednesday when we got, that's what you mean, right?
No, I mean in terms of the deadline for speakers who, because there's up to one, there is a clear notice that has to be given for speakers to come to public forum, and that should be the deadline. If speakers wish to bring items to submit to the committee, that those should also go out at that point when the deadline expires for seeking the request. That way, again, all of the materials from all submitters can come to councillors at the same time. Sorry.
We've had presentations from companies, businesses, organisations, and we would get them in diligent the week before, and that gives us councillors enough time to prepare. And all I'm saying is I don't see how this is different. I know it's a public forum, but it's still information, and it's information that, there's a lot of links in here, there's, a lot of reports in here, and just to help us answer and ask relevant questions, it would be helpful even if it was emailed. It doesn't necessarily need to be in diligent, but if Democratic Services could let us know and just give us a heads up, I would appreciate that.
I think that's a reasonable suggestion, and I'm sure that we will have more of a conversation about that after the meeting as well, but it's not an unreasonable request. Porirua Kelly.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Just clarifying, so this was submitted to council on the 3rd of August. Is there any reason then, or as a month, did it miss the timeline? Do they have to be in a month beforehand or something?
Under the standing orders, and I'll take clarification about this, but I think it's at least one full clear day before the meeting is held.
Okay, so they said it was the 3rd, so was it just the oversight?
Well, my understanding is that it's not normally done, that the items are sent out so early for items that are in public forum. If this was an item that was on notice, then it would be going out far sooner. But because this is public forum, that is where the discrepancy lies. I'm going to call for order. Is there anybody else who has any questions? Noting that the time has expired. No? Brian, thank you very much for coming in. We're now going to go to Graham Johns. Thank you, Graham.
Thank you, Mr Chair and councillors, for listening to me. After that, I feel a wee bit out of my depth here, because I haven't come with some plan or something. I have come just as a ratepayer to talk to the council about some of the feelings I have around wastewater and water. Mr Chair, I'll be guided by you if I cross any boundaries or step out of line. I'd like to start by going back in time if I can, and I will come to the point. And I come back as a young man from Te Rabe. I don't do public speaking, and you can most probably tell because my voice is already starting to crack. I go back to when I was a young man in Te Rabe, and I lived in Treaty Road. And I remember days when I would go to Te Rabe Beach, and it would be packed with people, picnicking, families, swimming, enjoying everything. And at that time, I believe the sewage outfall was, how do you pronounce it? Rakatari Point. I was dismayed to find out that today, in our present day, after the treatment plant had been built, that the sewage outfall is still in the same location. Now, we've had trouble at Te Rabe Beach with sewage going in and destroying the swimming atmosphere on the beach. And yet, I presume the excuse would be cost and expense and everything from previous councils. We are still pumping out in the same location. Therefore, nothing's changed. The sewage will still go in. I see in my latest Kapimana I read here that the council had been able to get an extension on the amount of treated waste that could be pumped out through that point. From 24,000 cubic metres now to 38,000 per day. I also note that they make comments in here from the experts that says no more than minor on public health, less than minor on marine ecology, and minor on coastal marine recreation. For me, as a layman, using those terms means that you accept that there is going to be contamination, whether it's treated or not, whether it's disinfectant or not, it's still contamination. And it's still going to, in certain conditions, flow back into that beach. Now, I sat with my youngest grandson at Porirua Club the other night, having tea to celebrate my granddaughter's 22nd, and we had fish and chips. And I asked him, how was your meal? He said, great. I thought, oh, that's good. And then he said to me, but I can tell it comes from Te Rabe. I thought, what do you mean by that? It comes from Te Rabe. He says, I can taste the sewage. Now, I think that's totally, most probably, incorrect. But what I'm trying to reference here is the mentality is already out there in the public. A gem of Te Rabe, which used to be the gem in Wellington for people to come to, is being destroyed, in my opinion, as it is being destroyed. because people have this image from previous years of what happened, and it hasn't gone away. And when you look at the beach today, you see the northern end has got sand, the southern end's got sand, and in the middle it's all rock. Oh, shit, that was quick. I'm sorry, that was quick. So I bring that up for that reason. The other thing I found out coming to these council meetings, I don't know, cross it off my bucket list or something, I decided to come and have a listen and see what goes on, was that the Tawa residents who decided long ago to go to Wellington for cheaper rates and things, their sewage and Johnsonville to the top of Middleton Road all comes through Porirua, all comes into our treatment system. That's fine, but my attitude as a ratepayer here in Porirua is, if you want to use my system, then you should be paying a higher rate than I do as a Porirua ratepayer, because you are loading up my system and shortening its life expectancy by, is that it? Is that my 5 minutes? Bloody hell, that was quick. Okay, well, then I have to stop there. There was other things I wanted to say around the thing, but so basically that's all I wanted to do. I wanted to come and have a thing, and I wasn't happy with Wellington Water. I'd like to finish on that. When I came to a meeting here when you were doing your budgeting for the city, the gentleman sat here from Wellington Water. He didn't say much. They sat here, and my attitude was he sat here somewhat arrogantly telling this council that if you want us to fix your water leaks and everything, you pay us an extra 33%. Was it? No, I heard 33. Sorry, that's what I heard. And that's what I read in the agenda here, which is something like about 3.6 million. Is that right? Am I right in that? I don't know. Oh, okay. So I was astounded, because I think to myself, okay, Wellington Water, you've been paid over the last 15, 20 years to maintain, at least maintain, and keep good service of our system. If you need that much money now to come to us and say, if you want us to keep working for you, this is what you've got to pay, and have the arrogance to say, if you don't get us to do it, you've got no one else, so you'll have to pay it. What have they been doing in due diligence over the last 15, 20 years? What have they been doing? And who inspects their work? I mean, the latest Kapimana today says there's a sinkhole up there by a Para, and they say it's down to a faulty pipe. I mean, I saw them do work in my street. It took them a month, sealed it all, everything done, finished, complete, great. 2 weeks later, they were back because it was leaking. Yeah, I know.
I
sorry.
loathe to do it, but I am going to. Thank you very much for coming in, though, and sharing your views as well. I appreciate that.
My daughter Vanessa will be very happy with you.
Please pass on our thanks. The next group of speakers is 10 minutes. That's Michelle Lawrenson and Mari Wright. Please come up to the microphones. Thank you for coming in.
For letting me speak today. My name's Mari Wright, resident of 55 years here in Titahi Bay. Thank you. Now, I've started off with the official information request for White House Roads, point 22 to 27. Where will the pipe be placed? Down Bothamley Lane or down Tom's Road? We request all plans to date, please. And why is the pipe going to be built for the same capacity as the ancient pipe it is replacing, because the massive infrastructure of housing intensification that is now occurring, it will not meet the flow demands, particularly with climate change and wet weather events. And in May 22, I came and spoke about the size of the pipe that runs through my property from Tom's Road through to Bothamley Lane and joins up there and goes down to the beach and carries on along the beachfront. And that was the size of the pipe. And today they are still thinking of not increasing the size of that pipe. And when will the residents be consulted? And my second part is the discharges into Porirua Harbour. The official information request, my IOA IRO 444, took double the legal requirement time, and there was no data no specific data available. But, for example, the council had an ad in the Kapimana showing the exact location of 16 Olympic-sized swimming pools of raw, untreated sewage that was being discharged regularly for years into Porirua Harbour. I know you're doing the pipes now, but if you can get that information, we should have been able to have information for my request. Thank you, Michelle. And also, I did come across some information dated 2021 in August, and it did stipulate Takapawahia Stream Outlet, Porirua Harbour at the Rowing Club, and Wanera Drive boat ramp, plus some other ones. And if you could get data then, why can't we get data today? Thank you, Michelle.
Yeah, that bit that I gave you, Jack, was from 2015 to 2018. There's specific locations of where there are overflows into Porirua Harbour. So it does seem a bit weird that asking for information for this important information, and all they get is just a table saying this is the total, because we don't do that, when clearly they do. It's a great concern. I want to bring up point 9, sludge. Please clarify why the percentage of sludge is consistently higher, 18% in the period November to February 23, and then 17% May to July, when the landfill acceptance limit is 11%. The UV, point 10 and point 34, please explain why the UV mentioned in point 34 is supposed to be running at 98%, yet point 10 reports the Duron has continued to be faulty and operating well under its design capacity. We'd just like to know, when is it ever going to work properly? These are all information requests as well, and we would like all this to be tabled too. The bypass penstock channel, point 11, we thought that was non-existent because there aren't going to be any more bypasses. It's not clear in this point if the leak skipped secondary treatment or tertiary treatment or both. As there's no effluent, there never is any sampling data provided with these reports, nor on the catchment page, which is a requirement of the consent. So please clarify and provide that data. Where does the flow go to if it's not going to the treatment plant? Because as Steve Hutchison keeps telling us, the pumps can only pump 1,300 litres per second up to the treatment plant. So where is the flow going? Where is the raw untreated flow going? What measures are being put in place to protect the environment from the 16 Olympic-sized swimming pools of untreated waste that is discharging into the environment? And the Kapimana ad that was put in the paper by the council some time ago, a very specific location of where it is flowing into the harbour. I want to mention the comparison of summary conditions. We did provide all this stuff to you guys the night before, but I just want to say again, with the comment, which was a little bit weird from the chair, that providing all this, if there were 10 speakers, I hate to think you might be up all night reading the stuff if we only have to get in the night before. As a courtesy, Brian Warburton sent that in 3rd of August. I would have thought part of the job of the Democratic services was to get it to you guys as soon as possible. That would be prudent. Don't remember seeing any protocol where it says we could provide it the day before. I mean, we could do, but if we provide a little bit sooner, wouldn't that be more logical to get it to the councillors sooner so they have time to read it? These comparison of summary conditions for the new consent, we asked for Wellington Water to provide a summary table. They've missed out some very, very important recording and sampling. Conditions 9, 9A, 10, 10A and 11 are missing, all to do with quality control, influent to effluent grab sampling. They're missing condition 16, incident reporting and incident sampling. They're missing condition number 27, provide reasonable organisation and administrative support to the community liaison group, and to be held at least 1 calendar year, not financial year, calendar year. And condition 30A and B doesn't mention at all the review model to be run annually. Condition 36 is missing, that's the regional council review, and condition 37 is missing, which is the expiry date. Handy to know. And this one's for you, Graham. 67% Wellington Water increase expectation in OPEX expenditure. I have read the advice to Porirua City Council regarding Three Waters operating expenditure 23-24 annual plan prepared by Wellington Water dated 22nd December 2022 and seek clarity on point 2C to accept that a budget below 14.09 million, that's the 67% OPEX increase from the previous year, will result in reduced level of service. The level of service from Wellington Water for performance targets and service level agreements has been consistently poor for years. So what level of service would be reduced? Council approved this increase at the 29th council meeting. From the questions asked by some councillors, it was apparent they had not seen or read the expenditure paper. So why were the councillors so ill prepared by their CE? What accountability measures have been put in place by Mayor Anita Baker, who is on the Wellington Water Committee, and CE Wendy Walker, who reports to this committee, to ensure that the approved 67 increase provides a better level of service? Will this be a one-off increase, or will it increase again to accommodate Wellington Water's high level of subcontractor spending, when the increase should really be for CapEx? We officially seek information on Wellington Water's KPIs, service level agreements and performance targets to support the 67% OPEX increase for 23-24 annual plan, and also seek the same information for the past 2020-23 annual plans. Nothing like seeing what we didn't get. And if I have a bit of time, hopefully I do, because Jeff let that other man talk for a bit longer, we just want to mention the map that you all have. Very quick one. Quick mention here. It was an official information from Brian Warburton, IRO 436. IRO stands for Wellington Water, providing the data. This information is relating to the discharge of untreated wastewater from Rukatani Point pump station, from Tangaray pump station number 20 to Rukatani Point number 35 on the map. That's red. Why is Wellington City Council paying for a service it never uses except in emergencies? Because that's the data we got from Wellington Water, that pipe, that side, is retained only for emergencies. Or put in another way, why is Tangaray Pump 10 to Rukatani Pump 35 sewer main part paid by Wellington City Council if it's not authorised to use it? Thank you very much.
We still have time, so I'll allow questions. Porirua Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I've got two questions of each of you. But if I could just thank you for the time and effort that both you ladies put into keeping an eye on what's going on, reviewing things, and ensuring that we know that we're being watched. I appreciate that. However, the question that I'd like to ask you, Mari, is well, actually both of you, what you've presented to us Are you looking at Porirua City Council? Are you directing this information to Porirua City Council or to Wellington Water? Is my first point of clarity. Or are you directing it to us to get the information from Wellington Water?
Well, I would just like to find who provides it for the White House Road, whether they're going to go down Bothamley Lane or Tom's Road, because I've got a very vested interest in this, because if it goes down Tom's Road, it should go right to the beachfront and along the paper road and join up with the existing pipe outside Kelleher's place. It could not go through the tiny little pipe on my property without damaging the deck and damaging my home. So I've got a vested interest in this.
So I wouldn't think it would do that because council paid quite a bit to fix that problem on your sector.
Yes, they did on the other side with Anunga Creek.
But my second question is this paper that you gave us in response to your OIA. You've clearly not happy with the
their response.
answers that you were given, but it also does say that you can seek an investigation and a review to the Ombudsman. Have you thought of doing that?
No, I haven't thought of doing that. I just, if the council can't answer my questions, well, yes.
Well, I'm just saying that's what the Ombudsman is there for too.
Well, I should, yes.
Aren't they paid by the council?
Who, the Ombudsman?
Yeah.
No, Ombudsman are independent.
Okay.
It's like the banking Ombudsman.
I'm going to thank you. I'm going to conclude it here because we've had the time limit. But just to, I'm not sure if you've seen the email correspondence in regards to the request of information that has been alluded to by Michelle and Murray. A receipt has been sent from council saying that they have received the request under Lagoima and will process the information to answer the questions that were placed in there in accordance with Lagoima. Oh, yes, I know. I'm saying in regards to your first question. But in regards to the second question, just to clarify that, yes, it is indeed, obviously Ombudsman is a parliamentary, is under the auspices of Parliament, not under local government. Mm-hmm. With that, thank you very much for coming.
Can I just ask one more question? How come whenever we present, we never ever see these minutes?
I'm going to conclude your session there, but thank you for coming in. And we'll conclude our public forum.
We'd like these tabled in the minutes, please, and see them next month. Thank you.
Thank you. Let us move on then to the conflicts of interest. Do we have any conflicts of interest? There are no conflicts of interest. Are there no items of extraordinary business? We are now going to move on to the confirmation of minutes. We are asked to confirm the minutes of the first meeting of the Joint Committee held on the 30th of May 2023. I'll move that we would confirm the minutes as a true and accurate record of that meeting. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Porirua Kelly. I will now put the motion, which has been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Abstentions? I believe it's carried. Let's move to report 7.1, Joint Committee Wastewater Treatment Plant Report to July 2023. To discuss the matter, I'll move the motion. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Duncan. I'll ask officers if they have any additional commentary to the report that's on notice.
Thank you, Mr Chair. No additional commentary to my short report of the Wellington Water attached report. We've got Mr Jeremy McKibben and Mr Steve Hutchison here from Wellington Water to take questions from councillors.
I also want to thank Jeremy and Steve for coming in to present here at today's meeting as well, so thank you. I'm going to open up for questions. Porirua Kelly.
Before you do, Mr Chair, I really would like, given that you do take the time to come here, I'm sure that you could expand on what is in the report. I mean, we've read it, but there must be something that has happened before this came out that you could report to us rather than just coming and waiting for us to be a question and answer time.
I mean, just a couple of comments. I mean, during the reporting period, we're under the new consent conditions, so we're, I guess, live and operating under the new consent now. Just to clarify, the UV system, during the reporting period, we had one event where we had a problem, but since then, the UV system has been fully operational and is running as designed and expected. So during the reporting period, we did make some operational changes in around the maintenance of the UV system, which we think has contributed to the reliable operation. So pleased to say that, yeah, it seems to be running very well. We are waiting on some further heavy weather events where we can do further fine-tuning, but that isn't just really in the optimisation of it. It is working very well at the moment.
Any other questions? Councillor Philo?
You know, I don't really know where to start. Just want to, obviously we've had a lot of questions from the public, you know, directed at, obviously you could probably answer quite a few of them. So given that they're here and they've made the effort, I would like to acknowledge them and try to answer some of the queries that they did have. So if we start with Mr. Warburton's presentation, what I'd like to know, because he raised an interesting point around the terms of reference within this committee and also the actual networks. So, are you okay? Yeah. So obviously we get updates on the network, on the projects for the network. We have it in this report now for wastewater storage tank, for, you know, the White House Road. There's another one, Tangere Drive. Obviously, they're there for a reason. Does Wellington City Council financially contribute towards these network projects?
David?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, Wellington City Council contributes towards all of the capital expenditure on the joint assets. It's a fee which is collected through the meter in Wall Place, which is that point where Wellington ends and Porirua City begins. With regard to terms of reference, I wondered if we might be able to direct that question to our committee advisor.
I'll take a moment to hear this advice.
Mr. Chair.
Sorry, is this a point of order?
Yeah, a point of order. Can I suggest we put off answering that question until people who understand this, particularly Roy, who understands this very well in terms of that whole thing around the...
This is just question time, Ross.
The question that's... So, yeah, so yeah, I get the point that that we may not be able to answer it, but that is still an answer. And it may be the business of the committee to seek in subsequent reports to give clarity to that. And so inevitably the question does need to be answered. But I don't think there's any part. I'm going to call for order. I know that public forum is a wonderful opportunity and it is sacrosanct for the public to give their 2 cents. But that is their space.
I've asked the question that Councillor Leggett referred to in your standing order.
I'm aware of that and I will get to that point. But before I go any further, I will please ask the public to respect the colour of the space. That if there is a public forum section, the public are allowed to speak their mind in that period. Please withhold comments during this meeting because it will create disorder. Let us all do this on behalf of our communities we are trying to represent. As to your point, I don't believe there is an issue here with regards to standing orders, which is, I think, where the conflict is. And my solution to this problem is that officers can choose to respond now with understanding that they may need to come back and give further clarity as we move forward. With that in mind, could we get a response from officers, please?
Kia ora, Councillor Fellow. Through the chair, So this committee is a joint committee established under the joint deeds, as opposed to Section 41A of the Local Government Act. It was not established by the mayor. It continues in perpetuity and is not disestablished every triennium. The terms of reference and delegations adopted by both councils originally in 2007 do provide that the joint assets are included in what this committee covers.
If it is difficult for you to be able to maintain good order in this room, I'd ask the member of the public who is causing disorder to leave. Let us proceed on to any other questions. Representative Allen.
Right, thank you. You may recall at the last meeting, I did ask, and it's at time point 43.27 on the YouTube video, that when you report the average monthly amounts for both the discharge volume limit and also for the average dry solids of the sludge, that you also give us the maximum and lower figures as well, the day that's had the highest figures and the lowest figures. And you agreed you would include it in this month's report.
I did agree to that. My apologies. I'll make sure it's included in the next report, and we'll report back on this period too.
Thank you very much.
Sorry.
So I just want to speak to that because I think this is a general point that has to come up again. On more than one meeting, items have been requested by members of this committee, and I have, in the briefings to the chair, made it quite clear that officers need to go back, check the tape, go through thoroughly, and make sure that subsequent reports or other information is sent to this committee in a timely fashion. There are so few meetings of this committee that it's important that that information is given to members so that they can make prudent decisions in accordance with the Local Government Act. So again, I'm going to ask, because I do not want to be the first chair who moves the report for discussion and then votes against it because my committee members are unable to get the information that they asked for in previous meetings. Kia ora. Any other questions? Councillor Duncan.
I've got a couple of questions. Page 14, item 7. There's been no odour complaints since 11 May. What happened that actually got rid of the odour complaints? Was there something done or has it just disappeared?
There hasn't been anything done yet. But there is some work underway in accordance with the new consent to have a weather station that turns off a particular fan when it's light northerly wind conditions. That's not operational yet.
So nothing had to be done? Great, that's a win. I'll go for my second question then was, page 14, item 9, the centrifuges, mechanical issues there, are they now fixed? Are those centrifuges working properly?
Yes, they are.
Yep. Great. Okay. Page 16, item 21, Tangery Drive Pump Station. Completion date was last month, but it's still fenced off and there's still diggers present. And on page 19, we're told of contractor issues slowing the progress and concrete pouring is in progress. When are we looking at that being finished?
No, I can't give you a date. We'd have to come back on that one.
I'm going to just reiterate that is a request for information to come back in regards to that time frame.
Good. And last question was the page 19, wastewater storage. Extension of time costs due to delay to tank earthworks are being worked through with Downer. Did we know that the lizards were there before we started the negotiations with Downer?
Where are they living?
Because if we did, then why would we be renegotiating timing, etc.? Were they known to be there?
My recollection is that there was a request put in for the lizard permit sometime the previous year, and it took a lot longer than expected to come back, which effectively we lost the season.
Yeah, but Downer would have been aware of that at the time?
I'm not exactly sure what was in the request for tender documents. I can't.
Just on that, I think that may help to give clarity to the committee if in the subsequent report Wellington Water could refer to the time frame around that application and its relevance to potential risk for the council in terms of funding the project. Councillor Filo.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Jeremy, Mr. McKibben, you mentioned before around the UV and that since the new consent, actually, let me just clarify. You said was there a discharge that has happened? Did that happen after the 12th of July or was that before when we were still in the old consent?
That was under the old consent on the 5th of May.
5th of May, okay.
Yeah.
So there were no wet weather discharges before the 12th? That one. Was that a wet weather one or?
The discharges that were happening because of high flows to the plant have stopped happening since we've upgraded the hydraulics to the plant. So effectively we've had no wet weather discharges that were caused by the high flows to the plant. The issue that we had with the fault on the UV system related to high flows, but they were not because of the bypass that we'd been previously reporting on. So whilst they were caused by high hydraulic loads, it wasn't due to the bypass issue that's been reported in the past. So while the issue on the 5th of May would have been related to high flows, it was due to the control of that actual bit of equipment. So
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
I hope that made sense.
So I've got a few questions, Mr. Chair. Councillor Duncan already answered my question or asked my question about the odour issue. But point 8, regarding the increase in the sludge tonnage, just wanting to know what's effluent suspended solids and that increased. Would you give more detail about what effluent suspended solids is and how it increased the sludge production?
Certainly. So the aeration basin holds a lot of sludge, typically 15 to 20 days of sludge, if that makes sense. Sorry, it doesn't make sense. We keep a concentration of suspended solids, bacteria, in the aeration basin that are used to do the work to eat the incoming waste. And so we'd grown the amount of sludge in there higher than we wanted for a target operating range. And so we were pulling that level of solids in the aeration basin back down again, just to get back into our target operating range.
So was there an extra 100? No, not really.
Sorry. Yeah, the technical way we refer to it is the amount of mixed liquor and this suspended solids that we keep in the aeration basin, and it's based on the average residence time of a cell, and there's a target where you keep the conditions. Basically, you keep enough microorganisms in there to eat the incoming food, and so we hadn't wasted enough, sent enough away to landfill in the previous months, so we were because of the mechanical issues at the centrifuges, so we were catching up.
Oh, okay. Point 11 about the bypass, and Michelle actually brought this up as well in her question. My question about point 11 is, does it affect our consent? But if I can also refer to her question, do you have a copy of their questions? Okay, she said it's not clear at this point if the leak skipped secondary treatment or tertiary treatment or both, as there was no effluent sampling data presented. Please clarify and provide data.
Okay, it's gone through, everything at that point has now gone through the secondary treatment process. So it's gone through the screens first, and it's gone through the aeration basin and the clarifiers. So it's what we'd call secondary treated. So it's gone that level of treatment. There is daily sampling on that point. So there's daily sampling of the combined, whatever leakage there is and the fully treated through UV flow. So that data is collected daily. It's operational data, so we haven't put it in this report, but every quarter we put it up on the website for everyone to see. So the data is there, and it's available depending on how it's to be presented at what time.
Okay. Yeah, that, point 11, is this the air conditioning unit that you were speaking to, Jeremy? Is that what that is, that shed near the UV? Is that what the project is for the ventilation? Can you just clarify that? We had that's point 14, under the treatment plant project updates.
Yes, that's right. It's cooling for that, for the main switchboard there, and so that project's underway now.
Okay, cool. And on point 18, this capital project list, is this already completed in preparation for our LTP, or is it still in progress? Our long-term planning.
It's been added into this year's annual plan.
Annual plan.
Yeah, the long-term plan starts from next year. It's a 3-year thing, but it can be adjusted annually. So it's planned to be done this year.
So you meant the annual plan that we just signed off on? Is that what you was included?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's more to come, potentially, in the capital list?
Mr. Chair, I think for clarity, the UV system and the expenditure is included in the current annual plan, which, as you say, Councillor, just signed off. I don't think there's anything additional.
Well, I'm not
to that.
talking, for point 18, it's about the backup power supply for the UV. So is that what you're saying, that's included in the annual plan? Oh, yeah, okay, great. That's good. Very good. So, did you have something?
No, sorry.
I've got more questions, but yeah.
I had Porirua Kelly, then Representative Allen.
Thank you. I have 2 questions, but before I ask those questions, I first wanted to thank you for acknowledging, in reference to the White House, your report back about the confusion that was caused at our last hui, and I really got quite miffed about it and felt that you were just. Yeah, never mind. Thank you for clarifying it. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. I've got 2 questions, and the first question is around. It's probably to you, David. It's about the portion that Wellington City Council pay to Porirua City Council. Is the formula or the model that is being used, is that a fair? Is it fair? Yeah. Is it fair?
Mr. Chair, with respect, that is not my call as an officer at my level.
Okay, I'll reword it. I'll reword it.
Please go ahead.
The model that is currently used for Wellington City Council residents to pay their share of maintenance and upkeep of the infrastructure based in Porirua City, should it be reviewed, in your professional opinion?
Yeah, through the Chair, the basis upon which the split is done, I can't recall whether it's population or number of properties basis, but it would have to be reviewed from time to time as the population splits may change over time with growth. The split itself is embedded in the deed, is my recollection.
Oh, okay.
I won't comment any further on that,
no,
but that would be the realm of our CFO, Roy Baker. If Roy had been here, would have been able to answer more fully than that.
So
My
one
apologies.
more question on that, David. Do you know off the top of your head when the last review happened for that?
I can recall a review being undertaken as part of the conversation with the CFO at the time in 2021, I think.
Okay, cool.
That does gel with my understanding of the time frame. That said, I would actually ask if an expanded answer on that can be actually sent to committee members as well, owing to the fact that Roy is not here to give a clarification about that, because I do recall this was a matter of debate in the previous term of this committee as well. Do you have any other questions, Poe?
Yeah, and I'm just on that. Do you think I might be a bit conflicted, given that I live in Porirua?
Nearly all of us do, so no more than anyone else.
Well, I'm just mindful that, particularly in Takapū Road, where a lot of it is coming, there's huge development going on there. So I'll leave that question there, and I can talk offline to you about that. But the main question I wanted to talk to you is based on, in your report, you're talking about work with Ngāti Tō and minimising the adverse effects and looking at setting up a report, but you've got some operational costs in there. And while I think that that's really good, I do question, why is that going to take 4 years? And can you just expand on what you're talking about? Probably 37, 38 and 39. It looks really good what you're proposing, but I mean, we can't wait 4 years to address adverse effects.
I don't know all of the ins and outs of the discussion on the history of this, to be honest. So all I can say is there was a condition to have it set up, done that particular report within 4 years. So it could be done earlier by agreement. There's a process where we've invited Ngāti Toa to join a collaborative type of group. That invitation's been accepted, and it will. I guess it'll be starting a couple of meetings each year at least programmed.
So it's around monitoring. Is this all a part of the consent? Okay.
Yeah. This is part of the new consent.
Yeah. Well, I would suggest that 4 years is a bit like that's just not even realistic, eh? You wanted to say something, David?
Any others? I might go to Representative Allen. You?
Yeah.
Okay.
Kapai.
Representative Allen.
Thank you. So point 11 again, is that leak still occurring, and when is it likely to be fixed?
There is some leakage still occurring around the sides of that penstock, and we haven't got a methodology of how to fix it sorted out yet.
So when will you have a methodology? I mean, I note it's only, it's six, you say 1 to 2 litres a second, that's 604,000 litres a week, which I know is only a third of the size of an Olympic swimming pool, roughly, but it does add up.
So we're arranging to get a camera to put up so that we can see it, because it's underwater or under
search.
Yeah. So we drained it all down. So the problem is that it's in between, and so it's quite a major operation in order to repair it. So the first, part of the attempt to repair it, we replaced where the actual seat of the valve lands, and so that didn't work. So what we're doing now is arranging for a camera to go up to try and understand where it's actually leaking from. So that camera's on its way. So yeah.
Where does it have to come from?
I think they're buying it in, so they're actually buying a camera for it. So it's not straightforward.
I'm sure gastroenterologists
Otherwise we would have done it, yeah.
The other thing, point 17, the hydrogen sulfide monitoring has commenced. What are you using to monitor that? Is it a similar monitor to what's been used, David, you might know, for the landfill?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I can provide Wellington Water with the information on the monitor that we're using, that we've secured. I don't know what sort of monitor Wellington Water have installed at the landfill, but it's at the treatment plant. We can certainly compare notes and advise the committee if it's a similar piece of equipment or not.
I'm just wondering if it might be better for the landfill, might be more sensitive. Point 28. So I assume this is from the consent, like public health will be no more than minor. Is there a definition as to what minor is?
That wording's from the decision hearing from the commissioners. So it's technical RMA wording.
So there's no definition around what minor means? Because everyone might have different views.
Yes, there is.
Yeah.
Okay. I think you meant that wrong. And point 48. I find it interesting that because there's changes to the neighbouring land use, you have to upgrade to meet the standard. So I think that's quite, I don't know, I just can't get my head around that. So if no one's there to smell it, then it doesn't matter. But as soon as someone else is there to smell it, it does matter. Is that what that means?
That's broadly correct. The sheep don't mind, but the people do.
Okay,
So
that's interesting.
the standard applied has applied for some time that no offensive objectionable odour, and the characterisation of offensive depends on what the receptors are.
That says at the boundary. Okay, thank you. That's all.
I have Councillor Fila, then I have Councillor Leggett.
I might just follow on from Representative Allen. Rachel. So point 53, with the consent, who will be doing that odour best practice plan? I'm curious about what kind of a company or what kind of expertise is required for that, and any idea of the cost of that report as well.
I can't. I believe we've engaged Stantec, an engineering company, and they may be engaging a specialist. I do not know what the cost for that particular report is.
So you're engaging Stantec to engage somebody else?
Stantec is an engineering company, and they may engage some more specialist sub-consultant expertise, as is common in this type of highly technical assessment.
Sorry, I wasn't trying to be.
Yeah, no, it's
I just want to go back to a question that was asked by the public around Rukatane Pump Station. So it was raised that from an OIA, the pump station valve is closed and only open in emergencies. So the question was asked, is Wellington City Council paying for a service that it never uses except in emergencies? Or in other words, why is Tangere to Rukatane's server main in part paid by Wellington City Council if it's not authorised to use it?
Yeah, through the chair, there's quite an amount of asset involved in the wastewater treatment plant and the network, which is there in case of emergencies. It isn't necessarily used as BAU on a day-to-day basis. Another good example would be the emergency power generator at the treatment plant itself. It's only fired up in the event that the power goes off. That's not a reason to not be paying for it in the meantime. You'll have an asset, and there would be assets in our own pipe network, for example, which are held for redundancy, so that if a pipe fails, the service can continue to run, and that is what Wellington City Council will be paying for in respect of something that's there for an emergency.
Oh, yeah, that's fair enough. Did you want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, part of the reason is it's historic. Originally everything went through that pipe, and then from around 1989, that valve was put in place and closed, and most things went through from Tangere and straight up the hill. So it's kept for emergency, as David's described, but it's a historic.
Can you give me just an idea of like what an emergency? What would that look like? Like, what's a situation where that would be used?
If there was a major fault on the pipeline, there's one single pipeline from Tangere up through to the tunnel. If, for example, there was a landslide that took out that pipeline, then that valve would be opened, and as much as possible would be sent around the other way.
So more for maintenance, like to help if there's maintenance needed.
I might just take that, Mr. Chair. The pipeline that has been described that runs from Tangere Drive pump station over the hill to the wastewater treatment plant would probably be the single most critical pipeline in our entire network. There needs to be an emergency provision. If it fails, all of the city's wastewater except that in Te Tahi Bay has nowhere to go at all. So that is the criticality of that pipe. As Mr Hutchison says, it's a historic pipe. You can consider it abandoned in a manner of speaking, but it needs to be there for that type of event.
Okay, cool. I would like to, we went to the Wellington, not the Wellington, we went to the wastewater treatment plant July, and I really enjoyed it, and I just wanted to, to thank you, Wellington Water, for, what you put on for us, and also the officers. Was good, wasn't it, Mike? Was good. And it's, from this report, and we've seen the new consent, it's good, it's great that there are no more bypasses going from the plant, and the consent ensures that there's no more untreated discharges, which is awesome. And I heard you say, Jeremy, you've upgraded it. The problem actually is in the networks, as in what's not getting right to the treatment plant. And what I'd like to request is I'd really like to get a better understanding of the network just for the joint assets that we own, Wellington City Council and Porirua City Council. I'd like to get a better understanding of what is being discharged, particularly from the 3 pump stations that this joint committee has, that we're sort of in charge of. So for the next meeting, could you please, in your reporting, through the chair, the 3 pump stations that we're in, so Tangere, Rukatane Point, and the city centre station, the city centre pump station, could we have the discharges from each of those 3, whether they were wet or dry, the date, the duration, the volumes, just so we get an idea of what is actually going out into the environment, what's not getting to our treatment plants. And I think it's quite important because, especially for our long-term plan, our harbour it's still one of our major strategic priorities, but it's even going to be more so now that we're not sure yet about the 3 waters, but it's going to be even more important, or one of our focuses. So can we have that can I request that for the next meeting, to have that data, and can I have it for the last 12 months? Hopefully there's not been too many discharges into the harbour from those pump stations, that it's not too big.
It seems a reasonable request. I'm acknowledging that it will be incorporated. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr Chair.
Any other questions? Councillor Leggett.
I'll just point out, Kathleen, that it's not just the pump stations. When the manholes blow down Mana Esplanade, State Highway 59, we have no way of knowing how much is going into the harbour. So there are all those other points where manholes blow and all the rest of it. We don't have an idea of what's going
I
into
totally
the
acknowledge that. Just wanted to start with the pump stations before we get into all the other,
Okay. No,
networks.
that's fine. I'm just pointing that out.
And also just within the reference of this committee too.
So can I just ask, given that we've got the treated wastewater consent now, and you've got quite a few references in here to additional operational costs as a result of that, do we have any idea of what the annual total of those additional operational costs will be? Because it's OPEX, not CAPEX. It's just a question. If it's no,
not totally yet. Some of them are periodic.
Yeah. Will we get that information at some stage? Yeah, okay, so,
Sorry, some of them need to be defined as yet. So we've got to work with Ngāti Taua and what monitoring we're going to be doing and things like that. So it's a bit early to say with any confidence.
okay, but at some stage that will, because that'll come through to Porirua City Council in terms of increased OPEX in the LTP, we're going to have to make some provision for those costs in the LTP. I assume you're in the process of, because this relates to another question I have, of providing that advice to us at some stage in the not too distant future.
So our advice to council on the LTP planning team includes a raft of, lifts and level of service that we have to provide, to meet the requirements of the Natural Resources Plan, Taumata Arawai, and a number of regulatory organisations that have, expecting a higher level of performance for these, treatment plants and networks.
Okay, so we'll see those figures.
Yeah, it'll be incorporated.
In our boots. Yeah, I am already. Okay, no, look, that's fine. I understand what the situation is, and I'm just want to be sure that we will, as a council, because we're the ones that have to make provision for this in our long-term plan, will have a good understanding of what it is that we're up for and why.
Yes, that'll be included. The advice will include, what allowances they're including. And what,
okay, no, that's
what
cool.
Future,
Good.
I guess future thinking has been allowed for.
So can I go to page 18? So in 44, an ecological survey. So that's on the 9th anniversary. Is there a baseline to that ecological survey? So has one been done already?
Yeah, there was one done a couple of years ago for the.
Okay, so that's the baseline, and so there's one at 9th and then 14th, between 14th and 15th. So as a result, does that relate to 40, 45 and 46, the 2 points there?
There's some interaction because ammonia was seen as something of concern, because at the moment the plant's got capacity to treat the ammonia pretty fully. As population grows, the
right. So that threshold within 5 years
upgraded.
Is from what? Is that a result of that ecological survey, or is it in the?
No, that'll be
That's
from an
itself.
estimate of the plant capacity.
Okay, so and can I say that? What can I ask then? The placeholder of $15 million. An upgrade to what? Is that the $15 million? Is that an upgrade to the wastewater treatment plant?
Yeah, it's a bit of a placeholder around upgrading the aeration system, to adding more aeration to be able to effectively get the ammonia down to required levels.
Okay, and so that advice will also come to us when you brief us on what we're up for the long-term plan in relation to the whole of our Three Waters system.
Yes.
Sorry?
Tom, I just
No, it's not. Was that already in place in our current long-term plan? I don't think so.
Mr. Chair, so when the service planning is done for the LTP, what we can do is, if it's of interest to the committee, we can separate that particular adjustment that needs to be made. That'll be brought to us.
Because, sorry, can I just comment, Chair, that's included in the National Transition Unit investment advice. So it wasn't in our previous long-term plan. So that's an addition. That is money. Oh, I guess we'll have that discussion. That is money we're going to be told to spend, and I assume, if required, and our ratepayers will be paying for it. No. They will. Well, if Of course, someone's
Councillor
gotta pay
Leggett,
for it.
perhaps, I mean, I'm noting that it is a comment, so I'm going to leave it as that. So officers have no need to respond to that, but I'll allow it as that. Do you have any other questions, Councillor Leggett?
Not on that particular area.
Okay. Yeah. Come on then. Councillor Phelan.
I've just got one. Page 34, the financials. What does the additional 62K on your controllable costs consist of? And does this budget, does that include the 67%?
Councillor Phelan, I think that's in a separate agenda item.
Oh, but that's for Wellington Water, and I thought, well, they're here because we always miss them. You know, we can't really talk to them about it.
Right. Okay.
That's what I was just thinking.
I mean, while I'm loath to, point out that, we try and keep things inside the agenda item so there's some order about it, I'll let officers respond to that question.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, can I just check again which page we were referring to and what the question?
Page 34. So it's, page 34. It's a table of the financials. So it's the 62,000 that was the overspend on controllable costs. I'm just wondering what are the controllable costs? What do they consist of?
Understood. Mr. Chair, I may need to check that with finance. It's not necessarily a Wellington Water expenditure. Council itself has a number of controllable costs in relation to Three Waters that aren't necessarily part of Wellington Water's one budget schedule. So I would need to check on exactly where that came from or what it consists of.
Do you know what generally controllable costs mean?
Yeah, controllable costs. So we refer to controllable versus non-controllable. Controllable costs, so in the landfill, for example, controllable costs are those things that I pay to the contractor, to consultants, to service providers, etc. Referred to controllable because I have direct control over those. Non-controllable are those things which are typically more financial expenses such as interest on loans, insurances, that sort of thing. In the case of this particular line here, other controllable costs, so we see contract services and consultants was probably Wellington Water's budget in there, repairs and maintenance, very little, depreciation and amortisation, a fair bill, with the other controllable costs. I would need to drill into the detail in our finance system and see what's actually sitting in there, but there's no problem doing that. I can report that back.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
I'm going to ask my questions now, but I do want to thank our committee members. They've been very good questions, and some of them have bounced off the things that I've already have as well. Let us turn to point 11 regarding the bypass pen stock. And I'm hoping that you'll be able to kind of help explain this for lay people who are probably watching this as well. The bypass pen stock, that's only engaged when there is an overflow event because that flow cannot go through the UV treatment system. Is that correct?
Yes, so when we had the old UV system in, it had to occasionally open because there was too much flow, otherwise it would overtop the channel. Now that we've got the two UV systems in, it should be closed except for very extraordinary events.
So obviously there is a leak that is... It is a sizable one if you take it in the cumulative, as Representative Allen pointed out earlier in the meeting. But I'm also trying to get a sense that this is, depending on the flow at any given time, say up to 1,300 litres per second, that a 1 to 2 litres per second would represent 0.1% at the maximum flow rate.
I believe your maths is correct. The average flow is about 300 litres a second, so right. on a normal day. So round numbers.
Okay.
I'd make the point again that we're sampling the combined, whatever leakage there is, plus all the fully treated flows. So there is a quantification of the impact.
Okay. So going to point 32, this is page 17. How does that gel, in terms of being fully treated prior to discharge, how does that gel with the possibility of this pen stock releasing a small amount? Because that is still an amount that is being bypassed.
There may be an argument that it's a tolerable minor expectable leakage. It's certainly not the intention that it's leaking. It's an unfortunate state of affairs.
Understood. And I would, before I go into my next question, do councillors, do officers understand that the community's view is that it does not want to have discharges that, of any type that are not, part of the consent. In fact, there'll be some in the community who don't want any discharges at all. So I understand from your previous answers that there is some work being done to assess the situation.
We certainly understand that any discharge that's not fully treated is not desirable, and we certainly don't want that to be happening. So we are undertaking to repair it as soon as we possibly can.
Okay.
It's not our intention to let it continue to leak, put it that way.
Right. So moving to point 34, I just need some clarity here. Are these triggers in addition to the concentration, or is it in replacement of?
It's a slightly different approach to the consent conditions for the new consent. So that the approach is being based around delivering basically as much ultraviolet treatment as possible. And there's some small allowances there for maintenance. Basically, that's why it's not 100%. So that's the main focus, and then the concentrations will be measured, but it's not. It's the compliance is more based on how much treatment is being put into the wastewater than what the particular measurement is. And there are some technical reasons around that went into at the hearing around the measurement not being the only or best representative of the quality of the effluent.
Okay.
So you're measuring an indicator organism, not the full range of potential contaminants.
Thank you for that explanation. Point 36, and there may be a few follow-up questions in regards to this. I'm trying to get a sense from Wellington Water as to whether or not the conversations that are going to be held with Ngāti Toa also could incorporate a broader conversation about what Wellington Water could be doing in terms of what, eventually, a new entity, election results pending, regarding a future solution to wastewater treatment in Porirua that does not require an outflow of the type it has currently.
Yes, there will be, and that was the subject of that report to be completed within 4 years.
Obviously, can officers, give me an assurance that because by starting that conversation now about future solutions, there would be plenty of time to look at what that solution would become as part of a future resource consent or similar type of application process?
Well, yes, it's certainly on the agenda for discussion. So it will be discussed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Last one. Two more. This is point 43. Can you confirm that, with regards to the website for the plant, that there can be a searchable list of all unscheduled or unplanned discharges being available to the public that can also look at data not just from the operable resource consent, but historical data from the previous period of time with the appropriate caveats?
There are a number of quarterly and annual reports up there already, so I imagine the technology would be searchable.
Right, but that's only if the individual user is aware of how the information is presented in of itself, correct?
I don't understand how the Google searches things, so yeah.
Is it possible for officers to come back and have a conversation about whether that would be a viable way for the public to be able to transparently access that information through that website?
So just to be clear, Chair, so your question is whether we'd be able to put the any data that's reporting to like overflows or non-compliant outputs from the treatment plant. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, in terms of those that are not expected, that are not within the consent. So dry discharges, wet discharges, sudden events or equipment failure. Just to describe some of the discharge events that we have as a committee reviewed, certainly in the time that I've been a member of this committee.
Yeah.
And furthermore to that it is actually not just put merely in the documents that are put up on the website, but actually put consolidated into a format that a layperson could find that information in a searchable way, so that people could easily know what is going on at the plant with regards to discharges.
That's supposed to be there now in the catchment, the Porirua treatment.
I appreciate the comment from the public gallery. I'm going to remind them again to respect the colour. Any comment on that?
So what we're talking about would be by exception when we're non-compliant, putting that data up. And so I'll come back with an answer for the committee about how difficult that'll be to be.
Thank you. My last question is, it was in regards to the table around the joint venture capital project updates. And it's in regards to the Central City Wastewater Storage. This is for committee members, page 20 in Diligent. There is a line that says the existing overflow locations on the site will be used when the tank is full. Can you give a sense of where those locations are? This may be related to a previous point that was raised by Councillor Philo around overflow events at pump stations. Would that be inaccurate to suggest that's the same thing?
There's 2 points, basically. One from the existing, we call it the pump station 20 overflow. It's just opposite the pump station 20 on the other side of the stream. There's a constructed pipe that comes into the stream, and that's got monitoring on it, so that will be included in the report later. There's also other manholes surcharge that fill up and overflow on the line coming down from the northern suburbs.
Yeah.
Which don't have such monitoring on them.
Understood. The second part is with regards to the White House Road stages 3 and 4. Can you just specify the process of the negotiations that have to be held with private owners? Do you have any guidance around time frame and the robustness of that process?
No, I can't give any further information on that. I'm not personally aware of the detail there. As this item is being incorporated into a document as a support document, it may be useful for subsequent report to actually allude to that, because it is a role where it is interfacing with the general public, and as councillors we should be aware of what that would entail. Those are all my questions. It's been a good corridor, hasn't it, people? Good. So I'm going to, unless there are any comments that anybody wants to make, Porirua
Debate?
Well, yeah. It is debate. However, I'll just remind Porirua that councillors are always free to ask questions so as they can have an informed debate. But this will be timed in accordance with the standing orders.
So, first of all, I'd like to thank Wellington Water for their report, and also to acknowledge the kōrero that's been around the table today and the in-depth questioning that has been asked, as well as extra information in future. And I just wanted to say that I think that that's important for that information to be included in our papers in future, because as you can see, the residents of our community are very proactive in watching what's happening, and I think that we can appease their concerns a lot more if they are informed. I mean, information is power, and if you have the information, then that can help subside any concerns you have. And I can say that for me, the questions that you've given to the answers that you've given to the questions today has helped me personally feel a bit more confident and comfortable that Wellington Water are trying their best to do within the resources that they have to ensure that we have a better infrastructure all but being old and needing a lot more investment. So I thank you for that, but also just wanted to acknowledge that while there's been a lot of questions and kōrero, I think it was important and I think it was really useful. And if the questions that have been asked today of the councillors to be included in our reports, I think that would go a lot further. Because I have to say that before coming here, I was going to vote against receiving your report because I did feel that it was incomplete. But given that you've been able to expand on the things that have been raised, I'm quite comfortable to vote to receive the report. And so while that might sound a backhanded compliment, it is me just acknowledging the reality of what we're working with right now and the environment that we're working with. We all know that we want to improve things, but I do have to say, and I want to end on this, I do have to say that I do not believe you when you tell me that there hasn't been overflows that are going out into our beach, because I live on Toredi Road. I look out my bedroom window at the beach and I can see, particularly when it's a clear day, there hasn't been a storm, but there's a clear day and you can see a line where it's darker. It's not blue, I can tell you, it's brown. So I don't accept when you continually tell us that it's been monitored, and because I know it happens. So I think it would be more helpful if when that does happen, that we own up and say, yes, that happened, we've tried to resolve it, we did it in this time frame. And I know that your new CE is giving weekly information out, which I find really useful, reading what she has to say, because that's information that she's sharing. It helps us understand the environment that you're working in. So even though it's a bit backhanded, I am thanking you for the further information that we've been given, and I'll be voting in support of the recommendation.
Thank you, Pua Kelly. Any other comments? Councillor Fiddle.
Okay, what do I want to say? I just, with regards to the members of public who've come and I'm just aware that not all of their questions were answered, and would just like to make sure that that happens.
My understanding is that I've seen an email that's been sent out saying that they have received this information and are treating it as a Lagoima request in full.
So on that email, though, it really just referenced the White House Road. So I just want to make sure that, because obviously they've talked about a lot more things. For instance, they mentioned wanting targets, service level, KPI, that accounting. So that was a different kaupapa. So how are we going to ensure that
I will endeavour to confirm that the information that they've sent is all incorporated in the request.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, and that's all I have to say.
Excellent. Any other comments? Yes? Councillor Leggett, sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Apologies, those. Thank you for being here. If there are no other comments, I'm going to put this to a vote. Has been moved, has been seconded. All those in favour say aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The motion is carried. Let us now move on to 7.2, Spicer Landfill Joint Committee Update, June 2023. Before I go any further, I do want to once again thank Wellington Water representatives for coming in for today's meeting as well. Thank you again. I'm also noting, just for the reminder of the councillors, that if this meeting goes into to 5 o'clock, we will be seeking a motion to extend. So just a heads up about that. Meetings will go on as long as they have to in order to make sure we're transparent, but I'm just pointing out that point. Okay, I'm moving the motion. Do I have a seconder for the report? Councillor Fielder, thank you. David, as the officer, do you have any additional comments to the item that was on notice?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll take the report as read, but I would like to bring to the committee's attention an event we had this afternoon, which will probably need to be reported on to the committee for the next meeting. In the last year, we've had two minor failures of the weighbridge, which have required the weighbridge to undergo some emergency repair. One of those failures had the weighbridge out of commission for a couple of days. We were still able to put commercial traffic through, not all of it. Cash was denied, but account holders able to come through. It's a bit of an exercise, but we're able to cope. This afternoon, the weighbridge failed again. It will be examined very shortly, and it may be another two or perhaps 3 day repair. We'll find out very shortly how long it's going to be out of commission for. But just to bring to the committee's attention that it had been my intention with funding in the current long-term plan to replace the weighbridge, to hold off on that piece of expenditure for as long as possible. Given this afternoon that we've had our third failure in the last year, I'll be pulling that project forward. We'll do the repairs that we need to do urgently in order to be able to continue to take our commercial customers across it, but we won't be doing those repairs with a view to keeping that weighbridge any longer than the next 12 months. If we can help it, it's time for it to come out and the new one to be put in. At this stage, I can't give an idea of the cost. There is $500,000 in the LTP for a new weighbridge. It may be considerably less than that, but we'll work on that and I'll be able to report back to the next committee with our progress on it. Other than that, no further updates to the report, Mr. Chair.
Okay. I want to speak to that item first before I open up for questions. So you've already noted that there is some CapEx allocation footnoted around that. But by your reckoning, what kind of fiscal impact has there been in terms of the revenue from that has been affected by the weighbridge being failed?
A good question, thank you. So the cash commercial customers which come across are by far the minority. The majority, great majority of those customers using the weighbridge are commercial customers that have accounts with us. They can still come over the bridge. What we do in the instance where the weighbridge is out of action is we use an estimation of their load based on their past records coming across the weighbridge, which we all have on electronically on a database. So if I'm a truck coming in day after day, I've already got a record. If I can't be weighed precisely, the MFE will accept an assessment of that. The critical part being, of course, the MFE needs to be sure that we're making an accurate as we can estimate of tonnage, because that's what our solid waste levy is based on. So the first failure that we had last year, I think it was a conversation with the MFE. How do you want us to approach this and get through the next couple of days? So it is minor. I could, if you would like an estimation of loss of revenue for the next report, we could probably check that by looking at estimates against last month or last year.
I think it probably would be prudent considering it is part of the reporting period that's coming up. Questions? Representative Allen.
Thank you, Chair. Just looking at the graph, it's my page 24, but everyone else seems to have different page numbers to me. So it's number 0.7, odour complaints. I see there was a little spike around about the 28th of June. It's just one little line that's almost up to the 7% mark or whatever it is, concentration mark. Is there any reason why that's there, or it's earlier in June? This one's at the end. Those are
I'm just considering whether that is on a regular basis, there is a controlled test of the machine itself, and that is quite a spike. That may be that spike, and it will show very briefly, and it will be quite peaky compared to the rest of the graph. That may be that. I would like to check though with the and come back and report that is the case. So I can have a look at the background report that we receive from the company providing the data. Okay. They may have a summary in there.
Because I'd also like to see if there were any complaints on that day that relate to that spike, because it doesn't tie in with the 10th and 19th of June when we had a huge increase. So I was just wondering why that was there. Point 11, I noticed that you are now going to be penalising Enviro New Zealand, as they refer to now. Are they just going to be paying the $1,000 that you were fined, or are you able to share with us what those deduction penalties are? Or is that confidentially commercial?
Mr Chair, if I may, I'll give a part answer. So the contract enables us to fine Enviro Waste by what's called a payment deduction in the event that they have contributed to or caused a breach in consent. The deduction is calculated or can be calculated on loss of officer time or any other work that's had to be done in order to identify either the fault or the cause. The contract allows us to make a deduction beyond the fine up to a certain limit without necessarily going to any legal proceedings, but above a certain limit there are legal proceedings required if we're going to place a fine. In the instance of the 2 fines that we've had through June, we haven't reached that trigger.
Okay. I'll think about that. Point 12, Enviro New Zealand have undertaken a more detailed site inspection and found areas where, with the newer fill, which are showing signs of escaping gas. Has that been fixed?
Yes, those areas were fixed by blinding off the surface of the ground with a bentonite mix, like a clay mix, sealed off.
Thank you. Point 14, has the second monitor been installed yet?
No, we're still waiting on that to be available.
Will it be installed this month? Because Wellington Water might have a spare one. I don't know.
Yeah, I will need to check back with the company. Unfortunately, they lost the one that was going to come here in Cyclone Gabrielle. They do have one that's become available, but I'm not sure whether it will be available through the month of September or not. I would also want to check to find out I think the comment made previously was the limits to which the monitor can check. I think the monitor we've got is able to check limits of the particulates and compounds that it's looking for as absolutely as low as can possibly be managed, and we could not get a more sensitive machine if we look.
Right. Okay. Point 22 to 25, really. So the project continues to remain on hold for the consent renewal until the odour issues are managed. And your advice from your advisor is that things have to improve. I still don't have a clear understanding of what would be seen as acceptable to proceed with the consent application. And I'm assuming that your odour advisor expert, air quality expert, has given you some idea of what that would look like. And so I'm just wondering what that indeed would look like. Is it number of complaints per day being under a certain limit, number of complaints per month, and how long would that have to continue for before it would be seen as being acceptable to apply?
Through the chair, we've had a discussion with the advisor that is providing that service to us, odour specialist at Tonkin Taylor, in late last year. I think for purposes of clarity, I would like to come back to the committee with the next report and actually set out what it was that Tonkin Taylor advised they were looking for. I can't comment off the top of my head. It certainly wasn't related to the number of complaints, but certainly was related to our ability to demonstrate to the consent commissioners that we were able to manage and operate the landfill with no undue risk of causing such consent breaches as we've had in the past. It's not a straightforward answer, sorry, but I can add some more narrative into the next report for guidance.
I think for the purposes of the next report, it should be quite thorough, because this is not merely an emergent issue. This has been going on for some time, and clarity must be needed on behalf of the communities, and particularly those who are directly affected, that there is some plan about how council is going to assess that these issues have been managed. And I use that word, managed.
Okay. So on that note, given the fact that odour issues remain high this year, and given the fact that last year you thought you would be able to do the resource consent application in 2023, which now doesn't look likely, what is Plan B if by 2030, I notice point 27 that you're going to be extending the currents or operating current cell 3A that will take you through to the current consent expires in 2030. What's the backup plan?
If we're unable to get the extended consent beyond 2030, we would need to close the landfill and apply for a different kind of consent, which would be a consent for a closed landfill.
So where would you put the rubbish?
Well, there are other landfills.
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, so you mean a consent to manage a closed landfill, not, yeah, okay. You meant. And just the last point under under point 29, the last bullet point, that you had to bring in extra monitoring equipment. Why doesn't Spicer Landfill have its own extra monitoring equipment to be able to do that sort of survey, given the issues that have been going on?
Yeah, the landfill does have equipment that it can use, and it would be using that on a monthly basis. What we did on that particular event was bring in some more equipment to be able to do it more quickly on a more regular basis and a lot faster at that particular time.
So it wasn't extra special equipment, it was the same thing, but more
in response to needing to get an answer very quickly following the June 19 event.
Okay, and just in that same point 29, about halfway down, could you just remind me what an ISM survey is?
ISM survey is the machine being taken over call it a set walking pattern across the landfill where it's instantaneous surface measurement from memory. So it's a number of spots which are, off the top of my head, thinking about the plan, maybe 15, 20 metres apart on a grid across the landfill.
Looking for, like, gaps or whatever, okay.
Looking for spikes, particularly spikes in hydrogen sulfide levels at the surface.
Okay, thank you.
Porirua Kelly.
I've lost my page, and I'm trying to find it again.
If it helps you, I could ask my questions and you can come back to you. Would that be all right?
Yeah.
Okay. Strangely enough, though, most of the questions were actually answered by Representative Allen, but they do have subs that will suffice in the meantime. Point 7. So would it not be prudent for, as part of presenting this data, to have officers provide a check on any significant variances, like the spike that was pointed out, and provide commentary? Do we have a system in place for reporting on those variances, apart from the line which is already in there around these standards?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, we would have, except that what I'm looking at here on this graph, these levels at which we're showing detection of hydrogen sulfide here are so low that you would even question whether they would be detectable at all other than by the machine. For that reason, the spike that we see, as pointed out near the very end of the graph, again, it's such an incredibly small measurement, you may not necessarily even be able to smell it.
Right. I understand that in terms of the human nose, but that being said, the way that the data is presented here does seem to suggest that there's a kind of baseline that the earlier points in that graph do seem to suggest, and then later on an increase in those in the sampling. And I would think that even to my rationale, I don't think we need to get all R-squared about this, but there is a significant increase there, even by a layperson, by my expectation.
When we get the information from the company that provides the monitoring device, we don't get the raw information from the machine. They provide us with a summary report on a monthly basis. What I'd like to do, it's a valid question. In my mind, I'm thinking, what is the difference between 2 parts per billion and 4 parts per billion? Is that significant? If it was 8 parts per billion, is that even a spike? It might be something that was there 1 second blowing in the wind and not there the next. I would like to check with the monitoring company that we're getting the equipment from and ask some questions around when is something on this graph significant. For example, is that spike significant? Would it be more significant if it was 10 times? Or if I could report back on some of the parameters around what we're looking at here, perhaps with the assistance from the company, and give you some assurance around what we're looking on the graph here. So I understand we're saying that it does look like there is a baseline, looks like there's a few gaps where nothing at all was measured, and there is definitely something there which is sticking up a bit.
Okay.
Yep.
Moving to point 11, and again, this has been covered by Representative Allen. However, I just wanted to follow up on something that had been raised. With regards to the formula of threshold, when it comes to whether or not it is directly on charge to the contractor or it is done through a litigious process or legal process, can you give some commentary as to how that formula or approach is defined, and is that in accordance with other contracts or other approaches that we've taken across the council? So I'm just trying to get a sense of, is this unusual or is this normal practice to have this type of arrangement, and how has that worked out?
The threshold is $5,000. The contract we have with EnviroWaste for management of Spicer Landfill is an unusual contract. It's one which is based on the model used to write the contract for Southern Landfill. It is not a standard infrastructure contract as a NZS 3910 type contract. It's been written for a one-off purpose at Southern Landfill, and when the contract was being reviewed here in about 2017, that model was seen as a pretty good working alternative. The deduction clause is fairly brief, and as I said before, it has that 5K threshold, which, yeah.
Okay. Okay, I have 3 more questions, but I don't mind bouncing it back to you so you can have your time.
Okay, mine is just a quick question. On this graph here, I'm going to make a big, the graph where it's talking about health and safety and the descriptions when incidents happen, how they're classified, when they occurred, the status and the outcome. I thought that was really quite useful. It's on page 28. And I thought that was really helpful because it actually tells us what the outcome was and what you did, except for when we go down to the actual complaints, where there's 49 and between reported on the 12th of June and on the 6th of July there were 22, and they've been verified, but there's no outcome for either of them. So what does that mean?
Yeah, those complaints are ones that have come directly through to us and they've been reported back through the EnviroWaste table. So the action or the outcome is not an EnviroWaste outcome, it's a PCC outcome. So where we've, for example, talked about the responses to the events on the 6th and the 9th of June, those are our outcomes. The table that you're looking at here is a health and safety database output held by EnviroWaste. Oh. So they do log complaints they get regarding odour, but the outcomes or the actions from that are for PCC.
So is that why it says that the complaints were verified by Greater Wellington Regional Council? Okay, but all right, thank you. What page did you say that was?
It's 29 on mine, the health and safety table.
Okay, the next one. Thank you.
Councillor Philo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So with the $5,000 threshold, obviously that $1,000 fine is covered, and also the time for the officers is what you're saying. Is there a risk of, with this contract, us ever being fined over $5,000 or over that cost?
Yeah, so for clarity, the fine we get is from Greater Wellington Regional Council. We're fined as an infringement for a breach of consent. Mm-hmm. The fine that I'm referring to through the contract is when PCC...
Mm-hmm. No, I understand that.
Giving a penalty to the contractor for not performing well enough.
So, in a sense, recovering the costs that we got because of them. Yeah, okay. So, my other question is just with point 5 and 6 around the biogas, the energy opportunity. So the LMS Energy, this Australian company that you're in talks with, regarding the lease that you're talking with them about, is that them leasing the land from you to, how does that look? Are they going to have like some buildings that they're going to put on there? Are they going to lease the gas that they take? Like, what does the lease entail?
Sure. So there's a couple of contracts involved in there. One will be the supply that we supply them with gas. They use the gas to create electricity. The other contract is basically the lease. So somewhere on the landfill site, they will need to put their equipment. It's not an enormous footprint. We're talking something in the order of about 30 by 40 metres. What we would intend to do is to create as simple a document as we can that says, use this piece of land for the time being, here's all the rules and requirements around it. They will put their equipment there. The equipment would consist of the generator, security fencing, possibly an alternate or standby flare, some other equipment like that. The lease would be written for probably the length of time that we would see that the gas would be able to be extracted to be able to create the electricity.
Do you have any idea around the type of revenue income that council's likely to get from what you've just mentioned, the leases and the gas supply?
I will give you a figure, which, as I say, we're still working through negotiations. At the very highest, sort of simplest level of expectation, so long as the gas remains in good supply, and we're talking about a 15-year operation, we would be talking in terms of royalty for the landfill owner in the order of about 3 million.
3 million over 15 years?
Yeah, 15, 1-5, yeah.
5, yeah, cool. Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair.
No worries. Before I open to Councillor Duncan, I'm going to move that we extend this meeting beyond the 2-hour period. So I'll move it. It's been seconded by Porirua Kelly. All those in favour? Opposed? Abstentions? Carried. Councillor Duncan.
It's just a brief one. Item 9, Greater Wellington Regional Council investigated and issued infringement notices for odour on the 10th of June and 19th of June. And then it says there were 4 breaches. Now, is that 4 spelt incorrectly, or should it be they were 4 breaches?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Duncan. It should be they.
They were 4, okay. And then I go to page 27, and it tells us they were on the 19th and 20th rather than the 10th and 19th that you said earlier. Item 29.
Yes, correct. That probably reads misleading. It should have been the 6th or the 19th of June. Those discussions with Enviro Waste were the 19th and 20th of June. Apologies.
Cheers.
So I have 2 questions left on my list. One is just in regards to point 6 and the biogas. Can councillors give an assurance that that a presentation can be given to this committee in regards to the project by the providers or council or both in regards to what this project means? I know that there is community interest in the potential of reusing the energy from the gas field. So it would be, I think, prudent to have that. Can we get that assurance?
I would love to give you that assurance, and we are very much looking forward to giving a presentation to committee, to council, to the CLG. We're looking forward to it. We are just following through, as I said before, that very strict due diligence process before we make too much available.
And understood. My last one is just, again, can I just reconfirm we have undertaken a swap analysis of our waste, and what is the status of that project, and can it not be incorporated into a future report in terms of that work?
Yes, we've done 2 swap analyses from memory, September last year, and then March this year, I think it was, We received the final reports about 2 months ago. They will be supporting our waste management minimisation plan work and also work on our diversion tactics for the future for the landfill. I would like to be able to submit some summary of what we found out for the next report.
Okay. Can I also then request in the next meeting, as a standing item, perhaps a section of this report also incorporate the other work that is done around waste diversion, C&D, organic, and so forth, because that is part of the overall narrative, although it is not pertaining to the actual asset of the landfill, but it does have relevance to the community as well. Any other questions? Oh, sorry, Councillor Duncan, and I'll have Porirua.
It's just on item 13, the 2 gas experts brought in from Hampton Downs. Who pays for those?
They were paid for by Enviro Waste.
Great.
Porirua.
I'd just like to foreshadow that I will be putting an amendment to the recommendation.
If you'd like to, detail the motion now, happy for you to do so.
So when we go into debate, then I can talk to it. But essentially, I'd like to move an amendment that Porirua City Council review the fines allocated for breaches to odour issues that exceed what we are fined. Essentially, where that's coming from is we need to stop this, and it doesn't seem to be working that we get fined because there's breaches and we pass that fine on to the people that are supposed to be doing the job. Well, I think that there needs to be a bigger penalty. There needs to be a bigger penalty if we're going to require them to do what we're paying them to do. So essentially what I'm saying is I'd like to move this amendment, that because it's not for us to review it, but for Porirua City Council to review it and take it up to council or whatever, but for them to review the fines that are allocated for breaches to the odour issues that exceed what we are fined, so that it's not just about us passing the fine on to the provider, but there's a penalty at it, a considerable penalty, because there needs to be some way that we get the message across to them that this isn't acceptable. We're paying you to do a job. Our residents are unhappy that it smells, and we're paying you to stop that. So let's make them, it hurts us when our rates go up. Let's hurt their bottom line.
I note the foreshadowing. We'll get to the seconding in due course, but thank you. And I think the motion appears from what your intention is to be a valid motion. Any other questions though? No other questions? Okay. So now that the opportunity has arisen that we've got no more questions, although again, just rewrite the point that committee members are free to ask questions so they can have an informed decision on this. If I'm just checking that the officers have got the gist of the wording for the proposed amendment.
I've written it down, but you might want to spruce it up a bit. So my recommendation is for Porirua City Council to review fines allocated or currently allocated for breaches to odour issues that exceed what Porirua City Council are fined.
Okay. Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Phil, sorry. So cannot second? Of course, they seconded the original motion. Is there a seconder for the motion then?
Oh, you can't. Are you going to second it, Mr. Chair?
So I will speak to. I can't even speak to him.
You can't speak to it if it's not going to be seconded.
No, I don't think so. Primarily because I think that the way to resolve this is to wait for the next contract and then negotiate it in there, as opposed to doing it during the middle of a contract, which worries me somewhat that they will increase the fees in some other place. So I agree with the sentiment. I don't want, however, to be punished in some other way for a contract that I think needs to be stronger in terms of the penalties that be put in place for breaches of that type. Also, I'm not sure if we're even allowed to do that from a legal perspective, which is why the review is the important word there.
Yeah. And so what I'm saying is take it back to council officers to review what we currently are doing, and if it is within the realms of what we can do, because there will be a contract in place with the contractor, that we look at pinging them for not delivering. There must be something in the contract that says that if they don't deliver what they're contracted to do, that there's a penalty. And it just doesn't make sense to me that what the penalty is exactly what we are fined. And is that fine from Greater Wellington Regional Council? Yeah, so that just doesn't make it. Where's the incentive to do what we employ the contractor, what we've contracted them to do? Where's the incentive to do it properly or better?
So I will ask one question of officers. Are officers aware when the next contract is due to be reviewed?
Yes, we are.
Can you give us a time frame around that?
The current contract first expiry date from recollection is April 2026. There is one renewal period which ends in 2030.
Come on, Mike.
So on that basis, I'm going to second the motion, and then that means that we can have legitimate debate on this motion. And then I will ask Councillor Duncan to speak to it, and then noting that that would mean that every other person has had the chance to speak that's in accordance with standing orders, and then we can go to the vote. Councillor Duncan.
Under normal circumstances, I would support it, but it isn't as if the company isn't pulling out all the stops to try and do it. There's been all sorts of experts all over this landfill to try and figure out what is causing it. If they could stop it tomorrow, they would stop it. But they are really struggling, and I give them full marks for what they've been doing. They've been trying really hard to control it. So I can't, in good faith, support the motion.
I understand. I'm going to give the right of reply to the mover, Porirua Kelly.
Oh, does anybody else want to speak to it?
Oh, is she? Okay, sorry, my apologies. My understanding was not the case, so you are free to speak. Please go ahead. Councillor Fennell.
You can speak to it too.
So 2026, that's a long time away. Whenever we get things in the media, fines, it reflects badly on council, reflects badly on all of us, not necessarily the contractors. So, yeah, I'm in favour of it having review. I don't see why I don't see an issue in having it looked at to see what else can we do to ensure that. Because I'm not entirely convinced that everything is being done by them, Councillor Duncan. So yeah, I'm in favour to have it reviewed. Yeah.
Representative Allen.
I know I can't vote on it, but I will speak to it. I'm in favour of it being reviewed as well. I think, David, you just intimated that the maximum you can fine them or penalise them without going to a legal review is $5,000. Was that correct? And I don't know how much you fine them this time. And if it was $5,000, is that per event or just once for both events?
It's per failure, in other words, per event.
Okay. So if it was $5,000, that would have been $10,000 max. And I would say that the amount of time that officers of PCC spent investigating that odour came to significantly more than $5,000 an event. So just having someone review it doesn't mean it's going to change, but it would be good to have it looked at.
If I may, Mr Chair, just a clarification on that. The clause in the contract that allows us to fine the contractor is related to the amount of time spent per each event. We are spending, obviously, a great deal of time trying to bring the situation under control, but when we place the fine, it has to be with respect to that particular event, and that would primarily be about making sure that it was the contractor that may have been at fault, rather than just spraying off a fine and we're not sure what the source actually was.
Okay, so it's due, doesn't it?
I appreciate the clarification on that point. My position on this has been influenced by the dates that you have alluded to. So my view is that a review that is not going to be, that would, if not, would be not done until 2026 does not seem reasonable to me. So I think that for that reason I'd support it. I'll rather reply, though, however, to Porirua Kelly.
Oh, thank you. And thank you, Councillor Hayward, for seconding my amendment. I make this, it was flippant when I did say charge them more. And then I thought about it, and I thought about that incident on the 10th of June where there were 49 complaints, so those would be residents, from 2:30 to midnight who took the time to get on the phone and complain about the smell. And then on the 19th, 9 days later, the same thing happened and 22 people. And so I think we need to be seen to be doing something, and that was really helpful with the clarification that you gave that there is due diligence done before it's, the fine is allocated, even though we will still be fined by Greater Wellington. So I think that addresses your concern, Councillor Duncan, but I think this is a good amendment to try and resolve this. I mean, it is a review, so we're not saying it's going to happen, but at least we've provided a vehicle for us to address something and for something to be done about it. And I think that it's about time that the ratepayers aren't the ones that have to pay, because I'm still not happy that that rate increase of 29% for going to the tip happened. And especially when our rates are already so high. So I'm moving this, and I hope that it is going to be accepted. It's in good faith that we are seen to be doing something.
Thank you, Porirua Kelly. I'm going to put the amendment up to the vote. So this is the amendment, not the substantive. Right, so we have the vote. All those in favour say aye. To the contrary, no. Abstentions? The motion is carried. So that means the motion is now for the substantive with the amendment incorporated in as an addition. So we're all clear about that? Cool. So we're going to go to the vote now. All those in favour say aye. To the contrary, abstentions, the motion is carried. Nice work. Thank you, David, for your work on this. Right, item 7.3, Wastewater Treatment Plant and Spicer Landfill Financial Report to June 2023. I move the motion on notice. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Duncan, thank you. Commentary from David, from officers rather, David. Any additional commentary from the item that is on notice?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair. No additional comment from me.
Okay, questions from committee members? Wow. Okay. Oh, there we go. Porirua Kelly. Good.
So it's interesting that the high interest rates are even falling into, our contractual work, but that is a lot extra that we are paying. But can you, the variance at 0.7 of 171,000 is largely related to the underspend on the Wellington Water wastewater management fee. Can you expand on that? Because I'm thinking they asked for an increase of 69% for their OPEX, and yet they've still got all these underspends. So can you expand on that and just help me understand why we're giving them more money, but they still got poochia in the bank that they haven't spent? I don't get that.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, the amount of the variance here, it is underspent management fee. It's OPEX money, so it doesn't get carried forward into the next financial year. If it's underspent, then it's underspent and there's nothing to carry forward. It's operational money. With regard to the Wellington Water's approach to council through the annual plan process, I would need the CFO here to address that. I'm sorry, I couldn't comment.
Okay, well, I'm going to request that an explanation be furnished to the committee members. Again, noting that the relative infrequency of these meetings requires that perhaps instead of waiting for the next report, that a response can be provided to committee members sooner than the next meeting.
So for clarity, Mr Chair, can I just check what the question is why did Wellington Water seek additional OPEX funding for the current financial year when there was, at the treatment plant, an underspend in management fee? Is that correct?
That was my understanding of the question. Would that be correct? Any other questions, Porirua Kelly? Any other questions, committee members? Okay, Councillor Filo.
I just wanted to clarify the 171K. That's what we're talking about, right? For contracts, services, and consultants. So, did I hear you right? Did you say that was for capital or no? Specifically, this is because it says for both.
Operating budget.
This is operating. Sorry, where did you say the capex was for? Was that a previous question? You didn't say capex. I withdraw my question.
Okay. Any other questions? No? Okay. So I'm going to put the motion that is on notice. It's been moved. It's been seconded. All those in favour say aye. To the contrary, no. Abstentions. It was moved by me, seconded by Councillor Duncan. I believe the motion has been carried. So we get to the end of the agenda item. There is only, apart from thanking everybody for coming along, well done everyone for making it to the end, and thank you to committee members for asking really good questions. We will end and cleanse by having the karakia, which will be corrected for the next meeting because it's not karaki, karakia whakamutunga. So, toru wha, kia horo te marino, kia whakapapa paunamu te moana, he huarahi mā tātou e te rangi nei. Aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou, ia tātou katoa, hui e, tae ki e. Kia ora everybody.